start working. I'm going to refresh Twitch. Oh. I guess software and game development sort of counts. I was thinking I should change the stream info to just chatting. Not really sure. All right, that works. Go chat. See if that works. All right, we're back. Just give me a couple seconds. I'm just changing some settings and stuff. I'm still under education. Do I want to change it to something else? Maybe let's change it to science and technology. There we go. So that should hopefully change the YouTube thing. I don't know if it will change the YouTube settings or not. All right. We're going to go to this view, even though it not the best view, but good enough. Right now, streaming, yes, cancel, manage. The YouTube one is a bit difficult to deal with when you are using it with Restream, honestly, but it is what it is. Okay, I can see you've said hello. So, all right was on the previous stream. Hello is on the new stream. Apparently I have a good connection. That's good to know. And categories entertainment. That can't be right. I should really change that. Oh my gosh. Is that why no one came to my other streams? I had it under entertainment? Is that it? Who knows, man? I'll figure this out. I'm not really sure. I'll have to change the settings on the... I'll have to make sure to change the settings properly for YouTube separately next time, since it doesn't really seem to... it doesn't seem to use the setting... It doesn't seem to update the same way... It doesn't seem to work the same way Twitch does. Twitch just changes the settings to whatever whatever Restream tells it to do. YouTube seems to do something a bit different. I'm not quite sure. All right, so currently I'm looking at myself, which is a bit silly, but what we can do is I'll load up YouTube and I'll talk about stuff. I'll switch to that if I need to. So I'll just have myself here and I'll look at the chat. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that works. I didn't deliberately set it. I don't really know how the stream schedule thing works. I just, so I haven't used that feature. I'm bad at scheduling anyway, so it's not like, I would, anyway. All right. I guess I'm just going to leave this screen open there for the time being. I might check Restream occasionally to see if there's anyone on Twitch, or check the other one just to see, but I doubt it. I don't think that anyone would necessarily. So, yeah. So, I know it's just you, Dilshan, but I might as well give some background just in case anyone watches this video in the future. My name is James Ryan. I have been, I mean, it's hard to say an exact point, but I definitely remember, I've always, I guess, been somewhat interested in all this stuff. But I remember first becoming acquainted with neural networks, the modern neural networks and deep learning, maybe around 2014 is what I can remember. I might be a bit off on the exact date, but that's when I remember. I would have been maybe in like year 9 or 10, around maybe year 11. And sorry, just give me 10 seconds. And yeah, I've been pretty interested in them. I've been following along. I learnt how they worked, or I learned to the best of my ability how they worked. The back propagation algorithm, the feed forward algorithm, the stuff like that, the different architectures like the recurrent neural network and the convolutional neural network, which were becoming popular, and maybe not in 2014. I'm not quite sure of the exact, but over the next couple of years, and from 2014 to 2018, definitely the convolutional network, the recurrent neural network was being used for text processing, and the convolutional neural network was doing really well at image processing. So um, that's kind of the state on all that. And I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that it's something I'm really interested in among everything I do that I like in science and maths. It's something automation and robotics, and by extension, I also just like computer science in general. So AI sort of falls into that bucket as well. But by extension, AI is interesting to me. The idea of and the way that it actually worked in practice at the time, which was trying to get it to do tasks that we didn't quite know how to program ourselves, but we knew how to program something that could figure it out. I thought that was pretty interesting, and there were some interesting things you could do with that, and some interesting things that we have done with that. Anyway, the story of me getting stressed out about all this and public reaction and public sentiment, I mean, roughly starts. I mean, there's a whole thing we could talk about when it comes to like ChatGPT and all that, and public sentiment about that. But I think for starters, and maybe I'll make a video about this eventually. Maybe I'll make this little song thing that I want to talk about. I'm not sure. I mean, I might as well. Since I'm talking to you about it now, it makes me feel a bit more confident. Maybe I should, but we'll see. It'll still be a lot of work though to get everything set up on that. I'm gonna try and narrow my focus specifically to talk about AI in the creative space, so to speak, and focus particularly around this video that Corridor Digital produced and the reaction around that, and what I think it means, and try and extend that to talk about what it means for every and then I'll branch out and talk more about AI art and AI in creative space in general, and then AI as a whole, and how I think and what I and how I think all of that is, and its impact on people's jobs and livelihoods and industries, the positive and the negative, and what I think are some things that people think that that a lot of people think that I don't fully agree with. They're good points, and some things that I think are that the industry that they're right about, that the industry is probably. I guess the tough point is for a lot of it, I feel like on the one hand I feel misunderstood, because a lot of the things people say about AI, and particularly about AI engineers or people that like AI, I don't really agree with, and I don't think that's an accurate representation of what someone like me thinks about AI and what I want to use it for. On the other hand, when I actually think about what is likely to actually happen, they might be right. They might actually, maybe they're not criticizing me, maybe they're criticizing the industry as a whole, and maybe by extension the people that work on it. But on the other hand, I have been in this space for a long time, and I feel a bit defensive about that, even though I'm not actually part of the industry, because, part of me is like, well, if I didn't get depressed, and I managed to finish my degree, maybe I'd be working in that industry right now. Maybe I'd be working on something else, uh, instead, but maybe I'd be working on something else. But I could be working on that type of AI, or I could be working on something tangentially related or some other type of AI. So, and just the fact that I've been, really interested in it and watching the space for a long time, I have a lot of, I it's been difficult. Not difficult. It's yeah, it's been something that I've had to think a lot about. Trying to both keep in mind, and oh well, we'll get to it. So anyway, on the other hand, I do think that some of the uh, arguments that people make or points that people make aren't quite correct, and I'd like to, and there's nuance in that I don't that I think there's nuance in this, but I also understand that in the broad strokes they may be correct. And it's a tough line to thread because um, you know I feel like well we'll get to it. It'll be easier if I start with more concrete examples. So I've been talking in generalities and been pretty vague, but we'll start at the beginning, beginning. Around 2018 or so, a video came out. Am I still looking at myself? I need to put up the scene view. A video came out from 2 Minute Papers on what was it called? I can't remember. It was style transfer. And I believe it's this first one. I have no clue which one is the first one, honestly, but it's definitely one of these. I better mute the volume just in case the video starts playing, and maybe should I filter by? Anyway, the exact video doesn't matter. The point is, it showed me an interesting technique which could take the sort of could combine the content of one video, sorry, not of one video, of one image with the style of another. So I think it would be GitHub. It's GitHub style transfer 2018. Is this the one? I'm not sure. That's not the one. It's not the one. I had it on my phone. I'll have to find it. All right. Give me a second to find the exact repository. I'll be right back. I mean, I guess I can show the camera. So it's a style transfer 2018. And we're looking for a relatively old one. Maybe this video. I don't think this is the original one, but this is not the one I was after, the one that I was, but if it's close enough, all right, that's kind of okay. All right, I can use this as an example until I find the actual one. So the basic idea of this is that it could take an image and it could take a second image and it could apply the style of the second image to the first image, right? So this is this sort of London-looking type scene, but in the style of this more like geometric artwork here. And then this here is this is a different image. I think this is a more American one. I think this is Times Square, or at least somewhere in New York, but in the style of Starry Night by Van Gogh, and it looks like that. So I thought all of that was pretty cool. Okay, so you've heard of these, you know these, right? So let me just try and oh, I remember now. Maybe. Nope, that's not it. All right, I'll be right back. Oh, I can't figure it. I can't figure it out. It's style transfer, like Powerpuff Girls news anchor or something. I can't remember. If I just put in all the keywords, maybe I'll find it. If I just look down far enough. It's a bit of a weird set of keywords, so it might make it difficult to find. I might just have to search style transfer AI and just keep going down until I find older and older videos. Because I wasn't looking for, when I came across this, I wasn't looking for anything new. I was specifically looking for an older technique that I knew, such that I knew how it worked. And such that I knew how it worked. And I was pretty sure that if I use that type of technique, that it probably wouldn't contain too much copyrighted stuff. I'm not really sure though, because this was back before people really cared about that. And so it's possible that actually they were using copyrighted stuff, just no one really cared. And so it kind of went unnoticed. So I'm not really sure. I do have to double check that. But the important part is that the actual style transfer itself doesn't need to be trained on the thing you're transferring the style from. So you don't need lots and lots and lots and lots of footage. You only need one frame. And the reason I think that's important in terms of copyright stuff is that even though technically, yes, that makes copying things easier because you only need one frame, it means that copying is now a deliberate choice that someone has to do, not an inherent part of the network, right? Because the way the network works is it's just using a convolutional network that's been trained on some other task. And so that doesn't have to be trained on anything that's copyrighted at all, in theory. It can be trained entirely on public domain and either things that have expired and gone to the public domain, or that are open source in the first place that no one has a copyright on, right? It can be, and then that system that is now trained on publicly available data can then be used on something that you have the rights to, that you've either paid for or you've created yourself. But I think one of the other issues with it's very complicated. I'm getting too deep into the weeds. I wanted to find this video, but I can't seem to find it, honestly. So I'm just gonna have to settle for a video like this, which I think is showing the same article. So if we watch this video, you can see that it's showing. I'll have to find it on my phone later. I know I found it before. I'll find it again later. But the important thing, the exact video and Git repo that I'm looking for. But the important thing is that it's basically this article, I think, or an article like this that it's based off of. And it has two input images. What they basically do is they take a neural network that has been trained on some other task of image identification, like this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a person, this is this is something else, and based on that, the neural network has to learn features, and these neural networks, in turn, the convolutional networks, were based on an earlier algorithm called SIFT, or scale invariant feature transform, in which the features for finding an object like a face were actually hand coded by engineers. So when we made convolutional neural networks, we made them in sort of a way as to sort of replace the need to manually figure out those features, right? So it does a convolution, which is similar to a blur filter, right? But instead of blurring things together, it multiplies a particular mask by the image and gets a number. And if the number is high, and a higher number means a better match, right? And so to detect a face, they might make filters that look for eyes and a mouth and a nose and an oval shape. And if they can find enough of those things within the right constraints near each other, then the algorithm would consider that a face, basically, in rough detail. And convolutional neural network does the same thing, except its convolutions are controlled by the weights and biases. And when I say convolution, what I mean is it performs the same. It looks at different, like 3x3 or 8x8 or whatever pixels, and it applies the same neural network transformation over each patch, right? So one weight actually controls a lot of different neurons, or you can think of it as the same neuron does the same set of neurons do a lot of different calculations. The part of the network gets reused over and over in the image, and with that first set of calculations transforms the input image into a different image, a slightly smaller image that is based on the results of those convolutions. And some of those convolutions, and by reverse stimulating the neurons, in other words, by using gradient descent to try and find the image that most stimulated a particular neuron, we were able to figure out what those neurons represent. So if you remember Deep Dream, right? Deep Dream was kind of similar, but what they would do is, I mean, this isn't quite right, but this isn't quite exactly. Deep Dream's a bit different, actually, than what I wanted to say, but basically by reverse stimulating a neuron by trying to find the image that most stimulated, for example, the dog neuron, they were able to get the neural network to produce its most dog-like image that it could, or to produce the most dog-like, to show what is the image that would most stimulate the neuron, what is the most dog-like image that it could see. And when you looked at it, it didn't quite look like a dog, but you could tell it was very, even to a person, you could see, oh, I just can see dog, but it might be a bit weird. There might be more than one face, there might be many different dogs showing up, so it's not a perfect representation. And it doesn't show all of the possible activities of the neuron, but it does show what the neuron is looking for, basically, what's highly excites the neuron, and it shows a lot of dog features and things that look kind of like parts of dogs. And so these neural networks are not entirely black boxes. We do have ways of figuring out how they work. And so in an effort to continue that, they did the same thing with other neurons. And what they found is that neurons early on in a network are responsible for edge neurons early on, neurons right above the raw input. So first there's the pixels, which are the raw input data, and then above the pixels, above those, above that, right? So this is the input here. Then above that, you have sort of more, well, this is a bit different here, I think, this paper. But the way I remember it, oh my gosh, the way I remember it is that parts early on in the network would be responsible for trying to find edges. And then above the edges, they would, now the next network is looking at the edges and is trying to combine those into bigger features, and so look for curves. And then those curves might be combined into simple geometric shapes like circles or lines or triangles. And those would be combined into more shapes like eventually working its way up the levels of abstraction from geometric shapes to objects like eyes or a nose or a mouth. And then eventually it would detect if it's got a bunch of eyes, a nose, and a mouth together in the right place, it will say, and an oval looking object, it might say that's a face. And then if it sees a face above a torso and then arms and legs, it might say, oh, that's a person or a whole body of a person, and sort of build up like that. And they sort of realized that the low level parts look at more basic features or more low level, less abstracted features, and higher up became more and more abstracted features. And since this is all still within the convolutional part of the network, it's also spatial. And so the next thing they did was they decided to see what would happen if they reverse stimulated the network, not on a single neuron to see what that neuron does, but they first fed both of the images through the network to get all of the activations, and then they reverse stimulated a new image to try and use gradient descent to find the new image that stimulated the low level neurons or the low level neurons in the same way as it did one image, but stimulated the high level neurons as the same way it did in the second image, in another image, I mean. And what they found was that if you did this, it produced something with the content of the second image, but the style of the first image, or with the content of one image and the style of another. It turned out that low-level neurons that were looking at things like edges and stuff, and obviously in 3-dimension, when you include 3 color channels, that's also including color, store low-level information regarding things like the style of the image, the shapes that are used, right? And going up a level, then you got curves and stuff in other parts that would be associated with a specific style. But high up, on the abstraction chain, or high up in the high level neurons, you're looking at things like this is an eye, this is a person, and you're looking at things that are more associated with content, where the style could be different, but you would still perceive it as a person. And so when you combine these two images, when you make an image that stimulates low-level neurons in a manner similar to the first image, but high-level neurons in a manner similar to the second image, you get something that looks like the second image in the style of the first. And if I look for, let's see, wave Horikoshi wave lion. Maybe that will help me find it. It's not Horikoshi, is it? It's the the wave by sure Japanese art. That's the one, Hokusai. Damn it. Okay. Hokusai wave lion. Let's see if I can find it. Nope. Hokusai wave lion style transfer AI. I can't find it. I can't find it. That is close. I'm looking for like a particular GitHub with the image on it, but I can't seem to find it. GitHub. Maybe this one will have it. Yeah, this is pretty similar. It's just not showing the exact images. But anyway, the point is, I thought it was really cool, and I thought, maybe people would do something. I don't know, like post. Look, I don't really use Twitter or anything, but I imagine or social media that much. But I imagine people would post things like, "Oh, this is me in in the style of Van Gogh Starry Night or some other famous painting," And I thought people could have some fun doing stuff like that, just taking pictures and doing stuff and doing that. But it didn't really make much ground, I think, beyond the people who were really interested in machine learning or really on top of it. And so it kind of fizzled out. Nothing really came of it. I remember I went on a website, like a style transfer website that I like one of the ones that I would have just seen in the previous search results. And I uploaded an image and another image, and it took a bit of time, and it combined them. I was like, oh, that was neat, and then I moved on. So it didn't really make a big splash, and I didn't really have a use for it at the time. So yeah, I moved on. But I do remember thinking this would be pretty cool thing to do, and I also later on they did when they one of the big issues with trying to extend the technique to videos was temporal coherence, because it makes a new image every time. Because it makes a new image every time from scratch. If you were to do subsequent frames, it would make images that, even though they were both the same style, because they were started from a randomly generated sort of version of because they essentially start with randomly generated noise and then try and reconstruct the image by gradient descent. They all end up looking different. You can have the same image. You can have an image with two images with the same content and the same style, one frame apart, and they would look very different, and so there would be a lot of flickering, and it would be very inconsistent. So it wasn't very good for making videos. Now, turns out they did manage to find a way to solve this. Maybe it wasn't not perfect. They were looking at a couple ways. For some reason, I just didn't remember. Either I didn't remember this, but later on in around 2018, although I don't remember where this is from. But the GitHub repo was apparently from 2018, the one that I found, was able to work with videos, and it was a pretty simple solution actually. It used optical flow it just did some optical flow on the original video and applied that to the new frame to generate the next frame, and then ran the network again. So it just used the previous frame as a jumping off point for the next frame, basically, and combined that with optical flow, which is a a known algorithm for determining velocity flow fields in an image, basically what things are moving and where and stuff. And I don't need to get into the details, but it seemed to do the trick, right? So with all of that, I thought, oh, it'd be pretty neat if someone, I don't know, maybe they could use it in a movie scene or something at some point, as a special effect. I thought it would make a pretty cool special effect, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Something that we couldn't do before that we can do now, to transfer the style from one thing to another, right? And so, many, fast forward a couple years or so. I mean, I'm getting the timeline a bit wrong. What I meant to say is I knew that the temporal coherence was an issue, but I had seen some other videos, not on that particular GitHub, but on from 2 Minute Papers. You can tell he made a lot of videos on this stuff at one point, and showing more ones that were better at temporal cohesion. And at that point, I had the idea of using it in a movie or something. And it was just last year or earlier this year that I realized that there was a pretty simple version of the technique of that would worked. That's a pretty simple GitHub repo that appeared to have solved the problem back in 2018. That is really the gist of it. Okay, so with that out of the way, when I saw this video by Corridor Digital, not the second one, the first one, I was pretty excited. I guess it's a year ago now. So I guess I've been worried about this for a while, and I guess the timeline isn't quite as I remember. I guess maybe I got stressed out about this. Then was thinking about sorry. Either I was worried about this, then I thought about knot theory, and then after knot theory, I got worried about this again. Either that, or the knot theory thing, or the original competition was a lot earlier than I remember. But anyway, they posted this video, and just in brief, they to cut a long story short, it was originally called AI Anime. It wasn't called Anime Rock Paper Scissors, right? It was because they have a series where they do anime fidgets. They did one anime fidget spinners. I remember. Yeah, that's the one. They did anime fidget spinners, and it's pretty funny. It's done with special effects. But it is live action, right? So it's done with VFX. And I think they did another one which was anime self-driving cars. That one was also pretty funny. Oh, and I guess they also did anime baseball. So they've done a couple of these. So it's not where they've sort of taken some anime tropes and messed with that. This one is a little interesting in that it's not. Anyway, this one is pretty similar in most of in the sense of like the actual plot and the way it works. Over dramatizing like a kid's game, it's very in that way. It's very similar to the anime fidget spinners video, but it's the technique that they use to it's technique that they use that is the interesting thing here. Now, at the time, I was just thinking, oh, I'm just glad. I was just glad that someone finally used what's the word? I was just glad that someone finally used style transfer in a video like I thought they would do, and I thought that was pretty cool. Um, Immediately, people did not think so. So the first bit of backlash I saw right away was from Mother's Basement, which is a bit of a weird name, but he seems for the most part like an okay guy. I was watching his video. I had been watching his videos on a couple of things. So just give me a sec. I said most part. I mean, yeah, he seems like a good guy. He seems like an okay guy. So I had been watching his video on well, one of the videos I would been watching on was the Happy Science Cult videos. Because I listened to a podcast that reviews things like this, and they had reviewed a bunch of the Happy Science Cult animes. So I'd never actually seen them. I'd only heard reviews of them. So to actually see bits and pieces was kind of funny. So I was watching some of those. I was watching him talking about Shield Hero and some of the problems with it. You know, and I thought it was quite well done, good points. And I watched also his video on CGI in anime. There we go. There it is. Look at that. Already got the AI stuff showing up. But but to make a long story short, you know, I thought it was really funny because I had just watched this video on CGI, his video on CGI phobia in the anime community, and in it he basically makes the point of like, you know, it's not CGI itself that's bad; it's how it's used, and you know, and that's a bit of CGI here and there, if it's done well, can be fine, and people just get overly up in arms about it and stuff. So I thought it was pretty I I was a bit taken aback when he did an about face and basically did the exact same thing that a lot of people talk about with like the problem with CGI in anime and CGI in movies in general, and basically saying this. Now, to be fair, I didn't actually watch the video. I don't know what he says. At the time, I made a lot of assumptions about what he might have thought and stuff. And now thinking on it, it could be that he meant a whole bunch of different things. But at the time, it was really stressful. I imagine that the biggest, I guess at the time, well, I'm not really sure what I thought at the time. It was a long time ago. But if I had to guess what the video is about, I think it would be about that it's, well, one, I think there are three big issues when it comes to AI and artists and why artists don't like AI. Just from what I have seen and what I can guess a video like this is about, I would say that there are three main concern that the three main that most of the concerns boil down to a couple of things. One is that they don't like that it replaces people, right? They don't like the idea of, that this thing can do that, can, especially if you're talking about generative AI, not just style transfer, but generative AI that is capable of doing something without a person involved. They don't like the idea of losing their job because of that. I think another thing they don't like is they don't like the lack of creative control. So I remember these videos about AI 120 FPS or something, right? Stuff like this. Can't remember. And the idea is you get a video of low frame rates and you increase it in sort of a similar way you do upsampling, like where you take a 1K image and turn it to 4K, or a 1080p and turn it into 4K by doing a 4 times upsampling. You would sort of by filling in the middle pixels with deep learning, you would do the same thing, but you would fill in the frames, right? And as uh, as this guy pointed out, artist, and also people that I also saw similar things in the comments. A lot of people would be like, if on a video where it was like showing an anime comparison, right? Oh, that looks really cool. And some people would even make comments like, oh, all anime should do this, right? And this guy is basically making the point of that's the problem with that is it takes away from the artist's intention. It doesn't necessarily do the right thing. It has a lot of problems, especially if someone is waving. In an anime, that might be a really choppy motion where it goes from one frame to another. But then when the AI increases it to 60 FPS, it looks like this weird, like, sort of very wavy motion. It really seems to prefer sinusoidal motion. When we're talking about something with anime where it's very expressive, it's designed with a low frame rate in mind. It has a lot of things like action lines and stuff. It's very comic, but it's got a lot of inspiration from comic and from manga in particular. Speed lines, stuff like that, where there's a lot of room for more stylistic, not realistic elements, and and you're using an algorithm that's intended to upsample, for the most part, real world images, then things don't really work out. And it's probably a bad idea to just copy paste that onto every thing. And for the most part, I agree with him, although I do feel like it's kind of missing the point about why people like it. I'm sure there are people who watch the video like that and think we should put this on everything. But I think really the reason most people like it is we're just fascinated. I think most people just like the idea of having this algorithm that increases the FPS and putting something in to see what comes out. And whether it looks better or not, or whether it's the original artist's intent, is kind of beside the point. It's just fun to see what comes out. Doesn't mean we have to reuse it on everything. It doesn't mean we have to run every anime through it before it gets aired on TV or streamed. It's kind of beside the point. And so in a way, I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect there between the artist's way of thinking about it versus what the people who were making these videos were thinking, and or what a lot of people who enjoyed the videos were thinking, because I think the artist is thinking about it in terms of how can I use this as a tool for creative expression as an artist, and the answer is I can't, because it takes power away from me as an artist. As an artist, I have an idea in my head that I want to get out into the world and express using, in this case, digital software, or whatever, in this case, using anime. And this program, by running it through this program, it's not actually helping me. Now, that being said, in my opinion, if you run it through the program and you get a result and you like the result, I think that would be fine. But he made the point of like, it doesn't always work. It doesn't always give good results. And he also mentioned that there is other software that does tweening for vector-based, for animes, for other things that you have much more control over, that can take a keyframed animation and produce a smoother animation already, and those ones already exist, and an artist can have a lot more fine control over what they produced, or over what they produce. So I think if I am, you know, putting two and two together, I think that a very similar idea is happening here, where for maybe someone like me, I'm just interested in throwing a video in there, putting a style on it and seeing what comes out. The artist is thinking about how much creative control they have over it, right? If you're making an anime directly, you have all the control, because you have exact control over exactly what every element looks like. If you are running a video through an algorithm, then you don't, right? Now, I do think there are ways of solving this, but I'll have to get to that later. That is my main guess. So I think 1 is being displaced, 2 is lack of creative control, 3 is plagiarism. Basically, an inherent part of how a lot of these algorithms work is they need to be trained. Unlike, for example, AlphaGo, say the chess, unlike, let's say, the chess, what's the word? Unlike, say, for example, AlphaZero and AlphaGo, which worked on Go and chess and used reinforcement learning, we don't really have a way of reinforcing an artificial intelligence to produce art, at least not at the moment. So the way that the generative AIs work, and even the way deepfakes work, is they have to be trained on they have to use supervised learning. So they have to be trained on lots of pre-existing data. So in the example of deepfake, for example, you would need to train the AI on a lot of different images at different angles of the face of the person of your target face, and also of your original face, the face that you want to replace with the target face. Now, speaking of Corridor Digital, they have done a couple of deepfake videos, right? So it's clear to see that they have been experimenting for quite a while now. They have been experimenting with using deep learning for the purpose of visual effects. So it's really not surprising to me that eventually they would work their way to doing some type of style transfer. And I'm sure to them it made perfect sense in their head. We do visual, because for them, they do a lot of 3D animation. They do a lot of visual effects, but on their other channel, Corridor Crew, they also do a lot of animations and stuff. And they've done some deepfake stuff too. So for them, I'm sure it all blends together as cool new technology that lets you do cool new visual effects. And so for them, I'm sure it made perfect sense to be like, well, this is just an extension of everything we're already doing, and we've already got the anime series that we do, anime self-driving cars, anime fidget spinners, anime baseball, etc. Let's do anime rock paper. Let's do another thing. We'll pick something. What about rock paper scissors? And let's try and make it actually look like an anime using the thing. So I think to them it made perfect sense. The thing is, they did not use the technique that I thought they had used. So at first, a lot of the reason why I was really quite confused is, well, part of the reason I wasn't sure exactly what technique they used, right? I had assumed that it was, I wasn't sure. I guess I kind of knew that they probably didn't use the exact same technique. That being said, I did assume it was a type of style transfer, and I wasn't sure exactly what I assumed it. Anyway, the point is, it turns out they didn't actually use that type of technique that I had just shown you of style transfer, where it's using a pre-existing neural network. I'm not exactly sure what they used, but I believe they used a type of deepfake, right? They had already been experimenting with deepfakes, and so I believe that what they were doing is basically with a deepfake, you have a bunch of footage of one person's face and you have a bunch of footage of another person's face, and you use a sort of auto encoding, and you're trying to get one thing to look like another. Now, I'm not sure exactly, I can't remember exactly how deepfakes work, and I'm not sure exactly if they actually did use a deepfake or not on their AI anime video. But what I do know is, but my assumption is if they did use a deepfake, they would have to do a lot of training on real world footage or on themselves or whatever they're trying to, on their source material and stuff like that. And they would also have to have a lot of training on their target material. Now, I'm not sure exactly what technique they used and stuff, but I do know that they apparently, I will double check. I will double check. Corridor Digital. I'm not looking for offensive bowling animations. What's the word? What's the word? Jujutsu Kaisen. Let's find out if I am correct or not. Did they actually use Jujutsu Kaisen or not? I'm not sure. But considering that their Did We Just Change Animation Forever video comes up, so yeah, that's another video. I've only seen the first couple seconds of it and the thumbnail, but they also did a video on their second channel, which is really their main channel. Did we just change animation forever? Oh, I didn't know they made a second one. Wow. But they made this on their second channel, Corridor Crew, which might as well be their main channel because they mostly post on that, and they save their main channel, just Corridor, which used to be Corridor Digital, but now it's just called Corridor. They save that for their big videos like AI anime or Boston Dynamics robot thing or John Wick deepfake, whatever. John Wick saves a store from a robbing or whatever, because they also did a John Wick. Sorry, they also did a Keanu Reeves deepfake as well. It wasn't John Wick. It would be Keanu Reeves saves a store. John Wick's a character. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Anyway, so they also did this, and I think they really shot themselves in the foot by titling the video that, and by calling it AI anime instead of anime rock paper scissors from the get-go, because that video called anime rock paper scissors, that was not originally called anime rock paper scissors. That was originally called AI anime. They really wanted the focus to be on the technique. And you can see from the description of that video and this one, where they talk about open source and stuff, that they're really, proud of it, and they really think of it as, as they say, a labor of love. They don't think of it as trying to replace anyone, but that's not really how it was perceived. And I think they really did, one, by calling it animation, they made a big mistake there, because it turns out a lot of people are quite offended by the idea of calling this animation, which I think is interesting for a couple of reasons. But for the most part, I can sort of I can get behind that. I can agree. I don't really think it's animation. I think it's more of a visual effect. I think it's more of a filter. You know, I think it's more like a grayscale, or a more complicated thing like you might see on Snapchat or whatever. To be fair, I don't really think of those as things as filters. I think filter is kind of a funny term to use for like the Snapchat thing where it puts like dog ears on your face or whatever. But because the whole point of calling it a filter is that like it's a specific convolution type algorithm that blurs things or does things, whereas the dog ears thing is really more like face tracking, right, than an actual like filter. But we've decided as a society to call them filters, so I guess they're filters. So in any case, for me, this is really just something like an Instagram style filter, or a TikTok style filter, or a Snapchat, or whatever other apps have filters on them. Or if you remember back when they used to have free Apple Macs that you could play around with at the store, and you could use the video software and put an effect on it, then they would call it an effect, right? And it was basically a filter, but they called it an effect. That's what I think it is really. And so I think they made a big mistake by saying that it was that it was a type of animation, and especially, did we just change animation forever? I think that's big problem. I think that's one thing. I think another thing, the mistake they made, is going for anime, is because, one, because of plagiarism, as we'll talk about in a sec, but also because people really love their anime, and you've just potentially angered the entire anime community. That's a big mistake. That's why I would have gone with something more that's like, well, I had assumed that they're using style transfer. Now I know they probably needed something where they needed a bunch more footage. I'm not sure. But if I make a video, I've thought of the idea, I'm going to use paper, because no one owns paper, right? As far as I can tell. For me, if an artist says you can't use that because it's AI and stuff, and I'm like, if an artist claims, I don't think there's going to be any artist that's going to claim that they have the copyright on paper, is what I'm saying. That would be the equivalent of like trying to patent the sun. All right, all right, all right. That's fine. All right, I'll just talk to myself then. But thanks anyway. I'll keep talking. I mean, I might as well. Oh, maybe not. There's not really a point in me talking to like no one. I know that um people could watch this in the future, but like I did this last time. I was doing this stream, and then the guy left, and then I stopped the stream because I'm like, well, that's it for the day. I'm done. I'll do it the rest of it later. So yeah, I might honestly just do that. I mean, we've gotten pretty good. I can always make a talking about AI part two. You know, I'm probably just gonna take a little break and then go back to the other programming, or I'll just call it quits for today and do it tomorrow. Thanks. See ya, Dilshan. Well, anyone on? Yep. Okay. Bye. It's funny, your view count went down before your messages actually came through. It's interesting. So, yeah. I mean, So I think that's another mistake. And I think the third mistake is, going is trying to using Jujutsu Kaisen. If they really did, I maybe they say they did in this video, but actually, using the wrong technique. And why didn't they use style transfer? I assume they just didn't know about it. Like a lot of people don't know about it. You know, I assume that's the main reason that they didn't use style transfer. I've got Dilshan's gone. I've got someone else. Do you want to say hi in chat so I know who I'm talking to? Because I was just about to end the stream since I didn't have any viewers anymore. Um, I'll check back in a sec. So, geez, I don't even remember now what I was talking about. I'm gonna have to talk about this another time. Oh, it's still you, Dilshan. All right, never mind then. All right, I will probably end the stream then. Um, yeah, I don't really. My brain is shut down now. Now that are you going somewhere or are you not going somewhere? I assume you're going now. Yes. All right, that makes sense. All right. All right. See ya. I'll end the stream then, and I'll talk about this another time, and I'll probably do the rest of the programming another time too. Or I'll play a game. Honestly, I might just play a game of some kind. See ya, Dilshan. Have a good one. Talk later. All right, on the stream, and I'll start a new one in a bit. Ending the stream in 3, 2,